You're listening to a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hello, welcome to Raising Teens. I'm Ben McEachern. I am joined, as always, by psychologist and teacher Collett Smart. Today, we have a question from Isabel. Thank you so much for submitting it, Isabel. If you have a question, a query, something going on in your household at the moment that you would love Collett to deal with, we would love to hear from you. Go to the Hope Media app. You can record your question. You can write it to us. Whatever you want to do, it'll get to Collett and she will be able to respond to you. The Hope Media app, the Raising Teens page. Isabel's question, Collett, is about mental health days. So her teenagers often are asking for days off from school, and this is heading towards her considering, this looks to me like they're asking for a mental health day. Should I be saying yes to that? This must be going on all over the place, I reckon, Collett. But a big question I've got about this is, what exactly is a mental health day for teens getting off school?
When we talk about mental health days, we're actually talking about time at home to rest your body and your mind and recharge. It can be a really important tool to look after and manage mental health, but one aspect to consider is it's only one tool. And so I think that's important to keep in the back of our minds as I talk about this today. We teach our kids to prioritize their mental health and taking care of themselves as important today. And there are definitely aspects to consider. I'm glad Isabel asked this because this question has been asked of me over many years now, and I think even more so now through the pandemic.
Yes.
I've seen my children's high schools actually scheduling time off for mental health breaks during the pandemic,
right?
Particularly when we had a lot of online schooling.
Yes.
Kids and their parents were struggling with Zoom fatigue or Teams, if your children's school used Microsoft Teams fatigue. And there was this mental load of everything our children were carrying in the pandemic itself. And so it's something suddenly being considered even more.
Yes.
And I've also wondered this out loud as a parent. You know, I grew up in South Africa, and as a culture, you just never took time off for anything. You kind of even dragged yourself off to work unless you were desperately ill.
Yes.
I'm not praising that at all. I think I came through a generation where that wasn't healthy. So it's really just trying to figure out what bits do we take as being healthy as part of mental health days and which parts should we just be wary of.
Yeah, it was similar when I was growing up in the 80s, 90s, going to school and heading towards the workforce, Collett, that mental health days just weren't a thing. Yeah. I'm really glad that they've become a thing in the past, decade or two. As parents are weighing up if they should allow a mental health day, what sort of things should they be considering?
When your child asks, first try to find out your teenager's reasons for asking for taking a break. So this might help you consider what's going on and what steps to take. So asking some questions will help you decide what's appropriate. So things like, are they feeling overwhelmed? So if your child is feeling overwhelmed, by what? So is it an upcoming assessment or an exam they've not studied for, or to get out of homework not being done? Those are very different aspects, and they need a different approach to a mental health day. So planning and structure and support and consistency.
This could be a difficult conversation to have, particularly if it's the morning of school and they're just raising this now and you've got 10 minutes to get into the car. That would be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and that's where I think as a parent, just being onto and aware of some of the things that are happening at school. And that's where we'll do another podcast on looking at structure and children who struggle to plan ahead and struggle with homework. That would be a different aspect. Thinking also then, did something happen at school? You know, was there an issue with a friend or teachers or something embarrassing? That will also need different strategies for then a mental health day. Is something happening at home? So do we need to address that stress? Is there illness or loss in the family? Has there been a death of a pet? We've spoken about the importance of animals before in a previous podcast. Is your child's friend moving schools, or is there a separation happening in the home that's causing pain for your child? You might also think, have they just finished a big or difficult assignment, for example, a long paper or a big test that required lots of late night study, and they are actually exhausted? So lots of questions to ask first before you make the decision for your child to stay home.
Is this to help the parent and caregiver make an assessment, for want of a better word, of the situation? Or is it also to help your teen to express what's going on and therefore help them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where I often say mental health days are only one tool in your toolbox of parenting. And, getting your children to think about what else is going on in their lives and not just shying away. And that's where I get to, when is a mental health day not a good idea?
Yeah, that's a tough call for a parent and caregiver to say, no.
Yes.
No. Why would they do that?
Some of the steps before where I spoke about, homework assignments not being done and so on. But I also mentioned when we get to the reason your child wants a mental health day, and if they say they're anxious or sad or stressed, this seems like the obvious one for parents thinking, well, yes, of course, then my child does need a mental health day. That's where I would actually say exercise caution. Most mental health experts will agree that mental health days should only be used occasionally for your child who's struggling with their mental health, and only, again, as one small part of this bigger pool of strategies. I should emphasize that as long as they're used in a way that's not reinforcing avoidance or their anxiety. You see, sometimes the problem with anxiety is that the more we want to avoid stress or avoid stressful situations, the more anxious we become when we have to face that situation again.
Even when you're a teen who's anxious.
Yes.
Yes.
And so avoiding that stressful situation makes you want to avoid it again the next time.
Yes.
And so you never learn healthy strategies for dealing with those stressors. And so it becomes this vicious cycle of stress and avoidance. Our goal with anxiety is to give young people healthy coping skills for dealing with and facing the anxiety. And so that's when we need to have a mental health professional work with your teen to assist with this.
So those are some of the other strategies that you were mentioning before. So not just relying on a mental health day,
Yes.
but there are other things that you should be investigating to help your teen.
Yes, and that would be in some of the other podcasts I've spoken about, helping your child who struggles with anxiety or depression. It's mental health days is not just the cure-all or the silver bullet for that at all.
Yes.
Yeah, and then, of course, not using it to avoid doing homework and avoid doing classwork or getting out of an exam.
Things that are your responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. And so when is it a good idea?
So mental health days can be appropriate for something specific. It should be the exception rather than the norm. Dr. Bubrick from the Child Mind Institute says a mental health day might be appropriate for a child who's been pushing through challenges and is feeling really drained. Then a break is not only a good idea, it's necessary. Mental health is...
Like it can be for adults.
Yes. And mental health is still part of health. It's still, we always think about physical health as health, but mental health is also health. When we push ourselves physically, we often push ourselves to the point of becoming sick. And it's also not a good idea to push yourself when you're feeling overwhelmed or drained mentally. There might be times when you might need a day to recoup. And so going back to when we have children or teens struggling with anxiety or depression, sometimes they are using all the tools that they have to work with. For example, they might struggle with speaking in front of a class or struggle with doing a test or going on a school camp. They might be struggling to do something really well, but they've done it and it's left them exhausted. So they've put in all those hard yards and all the strategies that you're working with a mental health professional, and now they're spent, and it's towards the end of the term. That is when you might consider a mental health day for them to just recover mentally.
So what do they actually look like? I should have asked you this ages ago. Because as we were mentioning before, this didn't exist when we were going through school. So what is included in a mental health day, do you think?
So setting limits. This is, again, going back to having discussions with your children when they are asking for mental health days.
So it's not like Ferris Bueller's Day Off where you just go and do whatever you want.
Absolutely not. It's because it's part of recovery and rest. It's setting limits and agreeing with those with your child beforehand. It's not just suddenly, your child springing on you that they want one and they spend the day watching Netflix. It's really about agreeing on how many days a year you might allow that to be asked for.
I was like start at the start of the year with this.
You
So,
can do
okay,
that. If that's
a great
something
idea.
your child needs,
Yes.
and you think that is something important for your child, you have an agreed limit. Then you also say, as part of your limits, they can't be used to avoid tricky situations or to get out of schoolwork. So those are responsibilities. They can't just use mental health days for those. And then on your mental health days, say to them, we need to be doing things that benefit and protect your mental health. Even on mental health days, you're not doing catch-up assignments. That's not what they're there for. And they're also not for spending the whole day on social media.
Yes.
So you would say, right, if you're having a day off, what are we going to do? Maybe you're going to go walking, you're going to spend some time in nature, you might want to bake or do art or play an instrument. Or
Do you think parents and caregivers should be offering to do this with their teen?
So that will depend on the situation and the parents.
Okay.
Often I'm aware that for some parents, they might need to send their child to a grandparent for this. Their child might be an older teen that could stay at home and do this. You might then be choosing to cut the Wi-Fi or internet access for certain periods of the day to help your child use the time wisely. For some children, a parent might be at home for part of the time and choosing to do some of this with their child, exercising and so on. But things your child can do on their own is read a book or listen to an audio book or listen to a podcast, listen to music, even taking a nap. The most important message for me is that a mental health day is not a substitute for treatment or a long-term solution. They need to be occasional, one-off, or once or twice through the year, depending on your child's personality, what's going on for them, perhaps in consultation with a mental health professional that you're working with your child, if your child has a mental health struggle. But if your teen is faking being sick or keeps nagging for days off and frequent breaks, it's not going to fix underlying issues, and that is when it's vital to look for support for your child and find a longer-term solution or longer-term help for their mental health struggles.
Thank you so much, Collett. And thanks to Isabel for sending in that question. We hope it helps you and plenty of other families all over the place. We know that Raising Teens is doing that. We know that it is helping parents and caregivers in the everyday stuff of life. But you should remember that you can do you and your friends a favour by sharing Raising Teens with them. Make sure you share it all around your social networks. And if you haven't already, you should do this right now. Subscribe to Raising Teens wherever you get your podcasts. This has been Raising Teens with psychologist and teacher Collett Smart. See you next time.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.